It is such a quiet thing to fall, but far more terrible is to admit it.
Star Wars as a franchise is one of the biggest fictional enterprises in the world. In the 80s, an icon of movie making, a worldwide phenomenon. In the early 2000s, a giant that spawned countless books, video games, sideshows and other pieces of media. And now there are very few who dare to argue that Star Wars is anything but a shadow of its former self, with those who do argue against that being unable to formulate any strong arguments or even agree with themselves why Star Wars is supposedly so good now, forgetting hyped nostalgia-baiting moment within weeks. Consume product, get excited for the next product, then consume product. The cycle continues. Recently, a YouTuber called Mola released a video called Star Wars Cannot Grow Up. It's a really good analysis of the modern Star Wars consumer and how Star Wars made itself dependent on this type of people, which in turn creates an endless cycle of
just consume product and then get excited for next product.
Nostalgia baiting, key jangling, and nothing else. But I disagree. Not with the video, but with the title. For Star Wars to not being able to grow up, it needs to be childish and juvenile in the first place. And I don't think Star Wars was that way for its entire existence. The early 2000s was a golden age for nerds, and for Star Wars it was a golden era as well, with plenty of additional content like video games, books, comics, which took a different perspective on the story. Media that fills the blank between the movies and those that take place in a completely different era. With the constant pounding of every single new Star Wars content, I would like to focus on the good things. Things that we lost. Great world building and amazing stories and deep, intriguing, even life-changing art. Something that really caught my attention when I was watching the Disney Star Wars sequels is how little world building there is. For the first two movies, it seems like the story, well, the thing resembling a story, takes place in a mini pocket dimension. We see almost nothing. It's actually quite amazing on how little they show us in terms of how people live in this huge galaxy-spanning universe with countless different species and cultures. We have not Tatooine in the beginning, random space cantina, not Hoth.
Salt.
Because it's salt, not snow, so it's totally not Hoth. The entire Republic is just a couple of planets from what we see, and even in those places, it seems like just a couple dozen people live there. In the prequels, you had plenty of opportunity to see how people live, how they travel. I remember when this scene with Dexter caught my attention, not because it was super good or anything, but it's a scene that is not key to the plot, and yet we do have a moment to see Obi-Wan meeting with a friend who owns a diner. We see the nightlife of Coruscant, Tatooine's marketplaces. In episode 3, we see many different battles on different planets being portrayed during the Separatist War, which, sells you the idea that this is not just some small local conflict, but a truly galaxy-spanning warfare. We had video games where you can physically go to some places and see how people live, and places that already existed in the movies are explored even further in those games. The combination of books, games, and even within the movies, the universe felt so huge and lived in, whereas in the modern Star Wars we are showered by empty lore. The Supremacy, a huge capital ship belonging to the First Order. Surely we'll get some information about how it was built, or maybe how people live there and operate in such a gigantic vessel? No, it exists just so it can look imposing and then being destroyed in a flashy scene. Starkiller Base, an entire planet turned into a superweapon. Will we see how it affects life on it? How it was built? Where the resources for such a giant weapon came from? The plans? Anything? No, it needs to be a bigger and more dangerous Death Star, that's it. Worldbuilding is extremely important when creating stories, and especially big, epic ones. Contrary to what a lot of people believe, Star Wars is not some kind of
"This is a film about space wizards intended for children."
It absolutely can be, but I don't see a reason why you couldn't write, let's say, a horror story or a thriller in a Star Wars universe. Unless you lack imagination and you assume that this universe can be as much as it already is. Something else that can sell a great story is to make all the sides of the conflict understandable for the viewer. There might be a side that is morally good and morally bad, but if you understand where are they coming from and why are they doing what they are doing, it's not only more immersive, but also very interesting. It can teach us many lessons, how some people fall, how the world view them based on their action. This is something that the movies did not explore that well. They had that possibility with The Separatist, for example, but that was a great wasted opportunity in my opinion. Even in the originals, the Galactic Empire is portrayed as universally evil and oppressive, and we don't really see the deeper perspective. But there is alternative media that explored it much better. In Knights of the Old Republic 2, we see the politics of Onderon, a political conflict showing us both sides of the argument. One wanting to secede from the Republic, the other wanting to stay as a part of it. The game gives us the opportunity to see what side has to say about the other. We see people arguing about it in game and presenting their arguments.
I don't understand your problem with the Republic. It's not like Onderon hasn't benefited from joining.
It was one of the darkest days in our history. Talia sold Onderon to the Republic, and what did we receive in return? Nothing. In exchange for the blood of our soldiers, the prosperity of Iziz has been stripped to decorate dead planets like this.
Look, if it weren't for the Republic, you'd all be speaking Mandalorian by now.
And because we accepted the Republic's aid, we should be indented to them forever?
You make it sound like the Republic turned Onderon into a prison colony.
Perhaps. Only that the Republic did not even conquer us. Our own betrayed us and allowed the Republic to take what it would.
And you do have a choice to support the side that you think is correct, and then see the consequences of your choices. A side tangent, but people like to complain about politics in Star Wars and the fact that politics does not belong in Star Wars, which is a very strange idea. Anyway, the same people will also praise shows like Game of Thrones, a TV show that is entirely about politics. But politics, and I mean in-universe politics, not real-life politics, are a necessary part of world building and can show different perspectives on problems presented in your story. Those games also question things that were established. They would show us, for example, an outsider perspective on how people may see the constant conflict between Jedi and Sith, deconstructing and questioning things that we might think are true.
But the reason the Jedi Civil War was named such was because few in the galaxy can recognize the difference between the Sith and the Jedi. To them, they are both Jedi, with different philosophies. Jedi often fall. They cause much harm on Onderon, for example, in the name of peace and protection.
Or just show a different perspective on events that happened in the movies, filling the blanks that the movies didn't explore. Also, some games gave us some unique scenarios. In Republic Commando, for example, when we play as a elite special forces clone squadron, positioning your squad mates and playing tactically, immersing you in the role of a commander. The beginning of the game, for example, shows us the Battle of Geonosis from the perspective of a clone trooper, and that for them it was not some glorious one-sided battle like presented in the movies, but a horrible place to be in, just like any war is. There is this trend in the recent years, not only in Star Wars but basically in all media, that studios, especially big studios, hate their own audience. They do a remake, a sequel, a reimagining of something that already existed and had a fandom, and they basically create a giant soup of nothing, very often inserting real-life politics into it, pissing off everyone. And it happens with almost anything, with the very small exception recently with remakes like Resident Evil 4 or Dead Space. And it's not like back in the day we didn't have bad movies or bad video games. You know, as much as I praise the prequels here, I am not a person who will go to you and suddenly tell you that they are secretly amazing and we just didn't know about that back in the day when they came out. They have absolutely a lot of problems and a lot of retarded plot lines. But they are fondly remembered because people working on those movies, on those projects, were clearly passionate about it. Just a simple glance at the movies and actors can show you that people in the sequels don't really care that much about Star Wars. We have the standard scorn for the fans.
I find the term sexist in itself because it's Mary Sue. I don't think there's a thing called Ryan Craig.
People who do not care about the movies themselves. And then you compare it to the prequels, where There are people who are really passionate about the project.
Hello there.
Twice the pride, double the fall.
We could see that even outside of the movies.
You kept a lightsaber. I officially don't own a lightsaber. Props guy gave me one. No, he didn't.
Despite some horrible parts of the script, they were allowed to shine. We did have some dedicated actors in the sequels, but Luke was supposed to be a depressed and jaded old man, so he was not allowed to shine. Same with McGregor, who, in Kenobi, had a vibe of an abused and bullied puppy. And the lightsaber duels. Man, what happened to them? They look like wheezing asthmatics fighting their lungs with every single move. They seem so slow and incapable of basic stretching. I mean, it had some sense for Finn fighting Kylo, as he was barely a stormtrooper, but there isn't a single good aggressive fight in the Disney universe. Some of the best fights in the prequels were short, aggressive, full of emotion and energy, and the choreography looked absolutely stunning. I stumbled upon some old footage from unreleased versions of the stunts by accident when I was researching this video. And just look at that, there's so much dedication, craft, technique, speed. They really look like two Force users fighting at their best. Disney with so much money didn't even bother to hire the same guy, or even someone with similar skills for its fighting sequences. Of course, this is just the tip of the iceberg. I didn't even touch upon the music, which was absolutely bloody amazing, with soundtracks like Duel of Fates or Battle of the Heroes. Video games like Republic Commando or KOTOR 1 or KOTOR 2 also had very memorable soundtracks, but sadly I can't be bothered to fight copyright bots till the end of time, so sadly this topic is only an honorable mention. It is absolutely undeniable that we lost not only great stories and great opportunities and great characters, there was plenty of people that were absolutely passionate about Star Wars and did plenty of amazing work with it. In terms of video games, we had strategies, RPGs, games with amazing stories, games with amazing lightsaber combat like Jedi Academy and Jedi Outcast. And what do we have now? Battlefront 1 and 2, which are just modernized remakes of games that were already released. Jedi Fallen Order, which was fine, it was okay, it was pretty good. And what, Rogue Squadron? Does anyone remember that game? With Disney acquisition of Star Wars, we lost not only beloved characters who were assassinated and made into jangling keys to hype people for a week or two for cheap dopamine. One of the original counterpoints for Disney Star Wars critiques was that old fans hate new things and hate change. No, we had plenty of new things and plenty of diverse Star Wars stories. Some generic ones, sure, but some stories also that deconstruct the universe very well, some that show the opposite side in a better light, and some that question things that were established. But none of them was made out of spite and hatred towards its fans. Passion, intrigue, great characters, different viewpoints, a united fandom and endless possibilities for different types of stories. This is what we truly lost.